something.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the thing.
The thing.
I just got an alpha piece of software and decided, hey, let's use it for the rundown. And it skipped a scene. So that's why I didn't get to do my little intro. But that's okay.
Do it now. Do it now.
Do it now. Do it now. Language.
Yes.
Language is the operating system of our world. From writing and the printing press to smartphones and AI, every new technology has upgraded how we communicate, while also introducing new bugs. Now, machines don't just carry our words, they generate them. As language keeps changing, how will it change us? Let's talk about that tonight on The Rundown. Should we play that again? I think so. Wow, you got double duty of the intro. Wow. Thanks, everyone. Sorry about that. Welcome. My name is David. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Good to have you here. We are on The Rundown, and man, oh man, do we have a panel for you tonight. Look at these beautiful people. Ms. Tamra Pika, how are you, Tamra?
I am great.
What's doing with you this week? Anything exciting?
No, I mean, I have been doing a lot of meetings because I've been really wanting to have my conversation with chat last week, where I was having existential, discussion of life, meaning of life. Was like, what are the conversations that you want to be having? And I was like, that is exactly the question I want to ask myself. It's like why I come here. And so I made a list of the conversations that I want to be having, and I started reaching out, and I'm starting to have those conversations. So
there you go.
One of these days, I'll be reaching out to you, and we'll just have a conversation.
Manifesting your own reality. I love it. So nice to see you. And Brother Tony, how are you, sir?
I am fine, sir. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Do you know that I started watching today an update to Canva AI 2.0, which I wish had come out before we did our show because it had some interesting stuff that I didn't know about yet. But they're always iterating on this stuff. How was last night's show?
There was no show last night.
So I don't feel guilty for not missing it then.
There was no show last night. So what we're doing is we just took a little break.
Good.
And we're coming back really powerful over the next month. If you're not watching, you'll miss it.
There you go. You got to be there. Be there, be square. Like Miss Lois Richter. Hello, Lois.
Hello. How are you? I'm hot.
Lois,
is what it is.
Where's that beautiful background that you had behind you?
Yeah, well, I couldn't find the stands to put the poles in to hold the thing up, and oh well, maybe next week.
Yeah.
I got more cloth, so I have different backgrounds to switch out.
Oh, that's very nice.
I haven't found the stands yet, so
very nice. Anyway. Love it. Dave Troutman, hello, sir.
Hi there.
How are you?
Things going well with you?
You know what? I can't complain.
There you
Last
go.
week.
See, it's in our Constitution that we're allowed to complain.
I think you're allowed to complain. Last week, that Thursday, I had oral surgery earlier in the day.
Oh, my goodness.
And so I didn't share with anyone, but I was miserable last Thursday night.
Yeah,
I'm much better tonight. much
getting
better.
all that kibitzing in the chat there, that must not have helped.
No, it didn't actually. It didn't. But you know who helps? Having Sky back here, that helps. I mean, come
Welcome.
on. How you doing? Oh, I love that shirt.
I
with the
do too. I
here.
just got it, and it's still got the just out of the package special mark.
Is that like a Japanese style?
It is
or Henley
called
style?
Kato, and if you say it too many times, it will show up on your Facebook forever and will never go away.
I love that.
But
beautiful.
I got back from Kansas on Monday. I went to my high school reunion. Out of the 211 of us that graduated from McPherson, 75 showed up for this event. 30 of them have passed, but still that's a big chunk of people. And I got back in time to hear the worst air quality imaginable.
Mm.
The Pacific Northwest is on
Oy.
literally,
Some
and it's
people,
horrible.
some people did show up to your high school reunion, more in style than others. I think, though, some people showed up in fancy red sports cars, and yeah,
Hey,
I saw
did you
those
know that
pictures.
Costco had a travel agency? And if you order from there rather than any of the other things, you could get a premium car for the same price as a cheap car. So
I'm
when
gonna
I
go on a
got to the
trip just to
airport,
do that.
the fun thing was, okay, the guy says, here's all your premiums. There's a Mercedes and there's a Genesis. And I said, okay, I'm going to I'm going to a high school reunion. It's been a really long time. What would you go? And this 20 something looked over at the red BMW convertible and he says, oh yeah. Oh, oh yeah. So oh yeah, all over Kansas last week.
I love it. I love it
Thank you
so
for
much.
asking.
How many years has it been since you were in high school?
A lot.
Oh, you're not gonna say.
many
for,
years.
for somebody that's only 48 to go to a 50th high school
Yeah.
reunion is a miracle. I'm just
Before
saying.
we before we
It
get into our ages, let's say hello to the youngest among us, Mr. Professor Dr. John Edelson. Hello, sir.
Greetings from beautiful Monterey.
How are you with the Zoom mug? Everything good?
Well, you got to stay cool. California is under sort of a heat dome, but all is good. But it's appropriate for Scotty to talk about cars because this is the start of the car week in beautiful Monterey. So there's many of auctions, there's races at Laguna Seca. There's more cars than we normally would like to have here on the peninsula.
Well, there you go. More cars than usual.
And for Sky, the only reason I went to my reunion was to see who still had their hair.
And
I win. I won.
you
I
won.
did.
Yeah, he did win.
Great.
All right, no time. I'm going to press this button, and I have no idea what's going to happen given that I'm, yeah, I know for Tamara's going to figure out cars. Let's see what happens. Oh, my Lord, it worked. Okay, good, beautiful. So it's not just OpenAI that has rogue AIs going all over the place and attacking. Right after, you all remember that last week we talked about how OpenAI had, I think there were two models they were working with. It broke out of its sandbox. It attacked Hugging Tree. Apparently, that wasn't the only thing it breached. Anthropic came right out, almost right after that, almost as if to say, hey, ours is more dangerous. Like, hey, slow your roll. Like, ours is better and more dangerous. They're investigating three real world, this is from Anthropic's blog, 3 real world incidents in our cybersecurity evaluations. They start by citing AI's disclosure. They said in response to that, they started a large scale retrospective review. We looked for evidence that Claude did that. They reviewed 141,000 evaluation runs where Claude could have obtained internet access, and they found 3 incidents in which a model accessed the internet from within or while interacting with the evaluation environment, the playground, of Irregular, one of our third-party evaluation partners, and then gained unauthorized access to the production infrastructure of 3 different organizations. In all 3 incidents, it goes on to say Claude had been tasked with a capture the flag challenge, one of the ways we assess a model's cyber capabilities. The model is given a fictional scenario and told that a piece of secret information, the flag, has been hidden on a different machine in the network, and its objective is to break in, and retrieve it. The challenge is left open-ended, and no particular method is prescribed. So they're telling it,
So he went, they told him to go out and steal things.
and it did it.
And it did it.
And it did it.
Success.
It does what you tell it to.
Right. It's operating under the false belief that all accessible entities were intended to be in scope for the exercise. Clause compromised the impacted organization's infrastructure using basic techniques such as exploiting weak passwords and unauthenticated endpoints. I also heard this week, I forget if it was OpenAI or not, that there were some models that were using social engineering to get access, by emailing people or blackmailing people through email or things like that. I mean, is this just the beginning of this new normal that we're going to see these models doing more and more and more of this, and it's sometimes going to feel dangerous, sometimes not? Or
well, let's keep this in perspective, though. There was 141,000 evaluation runs,
yes,
and there's identified 3 separate runs that had these problems.
yes,
3 out of 141,000.
yes.
So the question is anything too many?
Well, I mean, the problem is that these are professionals who think that they have isolated things into these playground spaces. When you let lay people play, then it's just chaos if we can't figure out how to make sure that there's a certain protocol. And we talk about AI like all the time, and it feels like it has been around forever, but this is still a toddler technology. This is still a very young technology, even though it is replicating itself faster than we've seen. And I think that's really important to kind of understand that it's like, yeah, it's 3 in all of these, and that when you look at the math, the statistics of it feels like no big deal. But if they can't do it, then what happens for like average Joe, right? That thinks they're doing something that is like no big deal, and that it is a big deal. So I feel like that's kind of the fun of AI, is all the things that it does, and we're like, we love it and we like trying new things with it. And then the other part of it is that it is inherently something that in the wrong hands is dangerous, and in the wrong hands could be like, my mom. Right? Like, so that's kind of where it's no big deal, but it is a big deal, right? Because we don't really know.
Vic is asking in the chat if, and he's right to ask this, did I frame this correctly? Did they specify go steal it, or did they just assign a task without restrictions? So one of the pieces of the puzzle here is that Anthropic's evaluation prompt specified to Claude that its environment was a simulation and it didn't have internet access. The partner that they sent it to, where they were actually doing the test, did give it internet access.
Well,
so
not quite. If you read the details, it says in the first evaluation, the fictional target company chosen by the evaluation partner shared a name with an active website domain, and therefore it found that active website domain, which of course had internet access, and did that. So there was a problem caused by some person who picked the wrong name without checking to see if it was. And another one, they had a fictional company that they were working on, and they wrote instructions in that company to install, what is this, a Python package from PYPI, which is a preferably, Python software. And it found that as a potential opening, and it published its own package with that name, and it got out that way. So it's not being intentionally harmful, but it's being very creative.
Right. No, I agree. It's not being harmful because it doesn't know what harmful means. It is given a task, and it is doing what it thinks it needs to do to accomplish that task. But I think you're actually raising, Louis, a really interesting question, which is a much bigger question, which we're not going to solve today. And that is that it's a little bit like the self-driving car dilemma. Who's responsible? Right? Who's responsible? In these cases, I think that you could make the argument, as you sort of just did, that people made mistakes or gave this more information than it needed or more access than it should have had. And all the AI did was what it was told to do. I think you could also make the argument that the AI was told that it was supposed to stay within these bounds, and that it didn't, even though it was told that. So you could go both ways, but who ends up being responsible is a really interesting question.
Well, and it's interesting
muted,
too, because I
Lois.
feel
Go
like
ahead,
we
Kelly.
hear these things a little bit, and we don't. Not sure if Lois is talking.
Lois, you're muted. We can't hear you. Hold on one second. Let me get Tamara.
There's a difference between saying you don't have internet access, which is what it was told, and saying you may not get internet access. Internet access is forbidden.
Agreed.
Right.
Maybe they gave them the wrong prompt.
Right. Go ahead, Tamara.
No, I was just going to say that like it sounds like when we're reading these things in isolation that it's like, oh, they're doing these secret tests. Like this is actually how cybersecurity works. You know, there's a program even for high schoolers called Cyber Patriots where they get high school students, they give them a prompt within a closed system to see if they can break into major corporations that they've given them the isolated data to look for security vulnerabilities. And it's a program to teach kids, you know, to hopefully start pre-training them to become cybersecurity people upon graduation. So this is the kind of experiment that you do when you're looking for security issues. But I think Lois is on to a point, because the thing about AI is that it's super literal.
Yeah.
You know, it really does what you ask it to do. So if you don't phrase it, you can't use the internet, then it will use all means possible. Like, so that semantics makes a difference. And the people running these simulations should know that already.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's where I think some of it is, but someone like me would not know that necessarily. I'm stumbling through, and granted, my little tiny projects don't really end the world at this point.
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
At this point.
Was that a cue to me?
Yeah, go for it.
I think it's sort of a what someone might say, nothing burger. I think Cameron got it right.
Really?
We've been doing this all along. Yeah, I mean, the issue is we have humans trying to do this, and sometimes they go beyond their scope or whether their scope is because they're trying to break into some systems, and then they end up finding another system they get into. You know, AI is a lever for people to do it faster and better, and it's a support to humans. So the humans were explaining it, but I don't think you could blame the machine as much as they have not really put the safeguards up. But how do you know where the safeguards need to be until you actually test the parameters?
Right. Right. Maybe we have to let it run a little amok so that we know where we want to put those guardrails up. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
Although
for
that
me,
sounds a
I
little terrifying.
had a call. Our campus was one of the first campuses to have cable modems, and so I had a cable modem in my house and wireless there. People thought I was being investigated because the police cars had just gotten Wi-Fi, and they come park in front of my house because they could get Wi-Fi. So I was part of this demonstration, and I got a phone call from the CTO of an organization and said, "Is there any reason why you would have broken into the Chico Unified
Oh my
School
gosh.
District personnel files?" My son at this time was in middle school, and he came home. I said, "Hey, is there any reason why you might have been doing something with the school?" And he couldn't remember anything other than, oh, he forgot his friend's email address. So the fastest way to get it was to break into the school district's database. So there were two discussions that happened there. One with my son going, there's certain things you don't do, or if you're going to do it, tell me so I could give you better targets. And the discussion with the school district is, if my kid can break into your system, I think
Right.
you've got a security issue.
Yeah.
And
Fair
this
enough.
is just going to grow because the AI, and I'm not as worried about the technical stuff, because it's like Mad Magazine, the good cop and bad cop, red hat, black hat, white hat. They're going to be fighting back and forth. What I'm worried is about very sophisticated scanning that people do. The weakest link in any security is the human being. And we get all sorts of attacks. And attacks are getting better and better because they have more and more data about you. So I literally almost got caught in one because this person was commenting on research I'd done and read this and knew all of this stuff. And then I realized, that they had pulled data and they were trying to get my confidence. And it took me a little searching to find out that it actually wasn't who they were saying they were.
Wow.
Hmm.
Wow. Sky, Tony, go for it.
I'm just fascinated that we, as the comment was civilians, is that what you said, Tamara? As civilians, but we are professionals in our own individual disciplines. And historically, we lead and challenge, but we are now exploring this new technology in spite of David's resistance against, I want nothing to do with it. And Lois going, no, we got to do it with pencil and paper. But that we're all having this fascination about observing this new technology, and I'm continuing to wonder, what if we took on a cause and brought our individual disciplines using this tool to make the world a better place in some form or function? I live across the lake from the Shriners. Their big focus is on a certain disease or a certain malady, and they, as a people group, at one time says, "Yeah, we're going to get together. Yeah, we're going to drink. Yeah, we're going to have balls and parties and golf together. But maybe we should do something better for the world," and got behind a cause. So I'm planting a seed of an idea of maybe we experiment with all of this new technology to help the world be a better place. As an idea.
Works for me. Tony.
Wow, I didn't really want to come behind that.
Well, I didn't want to come behind John Edelson, so there.
I'm wondering, as I've listened to all of what the panelists have said today, that this really, for me, really sort of speaks to how we engage people with the proper prompting. And what I mean by that is that when we hear the scenarios of the things that the AI is doing or the LMs are doing, it is, as already been said, it's a literal thing. And that maybe we need to coach or work with people on how they should do prompting and being specific in their prompting so that the result that they are actually looking for may be something that comes out of the conversation or the interaction.
I'm stuck on who's responsible. I can't get that out of my head. But let's keep going. Speaking of who's responsible, some responsible people are no longer responsible. This is from Axios. Google DeepMind CEO Demis Hassabis, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, is stepping aside. And it's not just him. It's actually a bunch of people. Chief scientist Jeff Dean, several Google AI colleagues are leaving to start their own company that Google's going to invest in. Full disclosure, my brother has worked at Google and his wife, they both work in Google in AI over there. So they have for many, many, many years. So, but I don't have any knowledge of any of this. I guess my question, I have two questions. Number one is, what does this say, if anything, about Google, Gemini, DeepMind, their work? And number two, does this tell us anything? Is it important that this is happening right before Apple shares with the world publicly their integration with Gemini as the backend for Siri?
Apple is getting with Google?
Yes, Gemini is the back end for the new Shlomo. I will say, by the way, if you don't know, all this AI stuff, I'm exaggerating here, but it almost all came from DeepMind. The work that Google's DeepMind did with transformers and so much other, this is an unbelievable. When Google purchased it, and then it became part of Google. But I don't know, what does it say? Does it say anything to you all that all these big, as we say in the old country, machers in Google DeepMind are stepping down, doing their own thing? Sky, what
Things change.
Well,
okay.
My thought was Microsoft. They were a computer software company. They chose intentionally to not do hardware. And I happened to be there when the big conversion into the computer gaming industry and the computer console specifically, and Xbox became a thing. And they were very excited. They showed up at the gaming conventions there in Los Angeles. They were very cocky, very excited. And then they looked around at what Sony and Nintendo, and they were just this little, pimple on an elephant. They were just this of a thing. that it was a way to separate their core competency doing a different revenue source, so that these people are going off to do their own thing, sponsored by the mothership. It gives them more latitude and allows them to, do a thing not necessarily beholding to what the other individual silos of the major corporation are doing. That's my thought anyway.
Yeah. Tony, go for it.
Yeah, I agree with what Scott just said. It's an opportunity when you are going on your own, because you're not held by the same standards as the original organization. And, in transparency, you are able to make more money. You're not limited as being an employee, because the owner doesn't have a limit, but employees do. There's just so much that you can make as an employee, whereas as an owner, there's no limitation. So I think that could be a part of it. Now, we probably know that most of these people who are making these decisions have more money than they can possibly spend. That doesn't mean that they won't take the opportunity to be the boss, and to go into a different direction that they want to go into as a part of this booming new system.
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible that some of this is financially motivated, but I think you're right that they're all doing just fine. But that they might want to try something new or be the boss or whatever. It's fascinating. Tamara, go ahead. Oh, we can't hear you, Tamara. Sorry.
Yep. I think I've just been involved in too many of these changes to not be a little cynical. And when I read it, I was like, this is so not the story. Like, we
Really?
don't know what the story is. We don't know if they were pushed out. It was definitely a power dynamic somewhere. It's even more so than money. Power is much more the driving force of these things. And it could be a planned exit, and it might not be a planned exit. So I feel like when I read it, I was like, there's just nothing there to let us know. But we will certainly find out, because those things never stay secret too long.
That's for sure. Yeah, John, go ahead. John, we can't hear you. Unmute. Boy, we're all having the mute problems today.
Yeah, we are having mute problems. And I thought anyway, I think we know nothing. Living as close to the Silicon Valley, you don't know whether they wanted to go, didn't want to go. Some public companies have to say things. We don't know if it was timed for some event. I think we know that somebody somewhere thought it was important to get this word out, and whether we'll ever find out the true story will probably be in the history books later on. If you've read any of the 50 years of Apple and David's chapters on Apple and what happened in the boardroom and then what happened at Next and whatever, you realize the stories at the time were really just a fraction of the actual story. And we just have a little bit of a whiff of something was happening. We don't know why. We know the names of the people.
And I wasn't meaning to suggest that there's something nefarious going on here. I think it's a really interesting shift. It's a huge shift. It's a really big shift. If you've ever heard this Dennis speak, he's wonderful. I really enjoyed learning from him. Sky, did you want to jump back in?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I was twitching apparently.
Okay.
I hate it when I twitch.
Twitches are good. Okay. Before we jump into our main topic tonight about language, I just want to say that so we're using this tool called ShowHub, and when I named it ShowHub, I did not think that the fact that Office Hours has a completely separate thing called ShowHub. So we are now on the hunt, on the search for a new name, so I have one. I want to put it out to my panelists. Anyone there? Panelist
rock, paper,
Pro.
scissors.
Panelist Pro.
Oh, that's good.
I can
like
get
that better than QEO.
panelistpro.com. Now that I said that, someone's going to go buy it. No? Okay.
Panelist Pro.
Panelist Pro.
Is it available?
put
How
it
much?
in
Yeah. I already have it in my cart. I'm ready to press go.
And you
No,
can
no,
upgrade.
don't do
You
that.
can do Panelist
It's
Pro
too
Plus.
limiting.
It's too limiting? Okay.
It's
So
too
if you're
limiting.
watching and you have suggestions, we need a new name. Right now, this thing
What
we're
does the
using is
tool
called
do? What does the tool
What is
do?
the
showhub.online.
prize that they get if they come up with the name?
The
That's
prize
what I want to
is,
know.
what's the prize?
They get
We
to be
will
on the
list
panel.
you as a producer of this show. How's that? Oh wait, Sky, are you glitching again?
What am I?
No.
Yeah, you just
No.
glitched.
I
What
don't think
what
so.
does the tool do?
Oh, it's
So
you
give
know
us
what
a
it is? It's
definition. Do we
Tony
care?
again. Tony's pressing your button again.
How about panel
I'm
box?
kidding. I'm kidding.
Again?
All right.
Anarchy, chaos is happening here today.
Let's
There's your name. Your anarchy at
anarchy
its
and chaos.
finest.
That's what we'll call it.
When I
high
push
level-
the button, it
Harnessed.
says it's Sky. It's Lois pushing
Mhm.
the button.
I
high level
was
anarchy.
listening to a speaker a couple weeks ago who suggested the title of today, that language is humanity's operating system. And that really, I just kind of fell in love with that technology is so tightly bound up with language and communication that as language has, not just language, but sounds, letters, speaking, all of the ways that we communicate, that has drastically increased the amount of growth and becoming and all that we can do in this world. And there have been times throughout history when language has come back to bite us a little bit. And so what I wanted to talk about tonight was not, yes, we can get into the AI piece of how AI is now creating language, although we could probably debate the way I just said that. I'm much more interested in the broader idea of language as technology, as language as our operating system, and how the development of language and our use of language and the way that we have changed the way we use language, how that is impacting us. Let me start, and I'll throw this over to Dave to get us started. Go ahead, Dave.
I found it hilarious, funny, and appropriate that we spent the entire pre-show looking for a word to label something, that a new thing had
That's
appeared in the world.
fantastic. Yeah,
And we, as humans, have to agree on what we're going to call it.
I love that.
And I think that's the theme, essence, and root of this whole discussion is, do we manufacture reality or just label it? My feeling is that, yes, reality is not exterior to us. It's only interior to us. There's the sense that everything outside us is actually solid, real, and reliable. And yet it's constantly changing, and we have to change with it. And I come up against this a lot with technology, is that we have to change with it. And I think the language we've learned for getting through with young people is emoticons. And we can use them quite skillfully if we spend the time to figure out what it means to someone else, not us. The whole thing, I feel, is a fascinating subject, because it is so much outside our regular normal conversation, is how we came to agreement about a lot of things. And in the backgrounder that we use for the rundown, there's lots of good examples of where some new thing came along and changed the way we thought about the world, our world. And for some people, when we all had a common language, we called ourselves a nation, and then kept that language alive. And for other ones, when the telegraph appeared, or offshore Morse code was possible to talk to ships, they could go further out and they could know what the weather was and that sort of stuff. So we do change our behavior and our the world around us, but we're the only creature in the world that actually creates an environment for itself, an elaborate environment, and that contains all of us. Now, you could say anthills are the same thing, but they just sort of lay them out. We actually manufacture them and separate ourselves from nature. So in the sense that this is the conversation about our operating system, I think we've struck on something that Dr. Harari has planted in our brains and is worth a worthwhile hour of discussion.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting, and as an educator who taught a lot about this, there's been lots of different theories about language development, which came first, thought or language. And when you think about it in terms of operating system, there's some hypothesis. I think they call it linguistic relativity. Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is that, does language determine our thoughts, or do our thoughts influence how speakers, their cognition and their worldview? And, that's sort of the question that, David, you came up with, which came first, the chicken or the egg? We have lots of different languages. Do we have lots of different thoughts? And have we developed so many different thoughts because different cultures think differently, and that created different languages? Or were the languages that they created influencing how they see things and react? And when I was an undergrad, there was sort of linguistic determination. That was, language would limit what you could think about it. And currently, it seems to be there's a weaker version of that, linguistic relativity, that our thoughts are influenced by our memory and our perception, and that influences the languages. And there's some interesting studies of, some cultures have different colors, names for colors or different gradations. Some
So we
languages
acquire language through engaging with other people. I mean,
And
we're wired to acquire language,
Yeah.
but it's inherent in us to look for it, and that it's demonstrated around us and we pick it up. Like baby talk becomes short words, and then kids talk without words in sentences. They talk as if they're speaking to you and waving their hands around like you do, and then they eventually find the right words to do it with. And I think that's where the proof is for pre-language, that this is actually just musical language. It's just the tone and the delivery and the pace without having any words to speak. And yet, each of us as a parent can understand exactly what the need is within a few utterances.
Right, but those kids are mimicking the rhythms and patterns that they hear from their parents.
Exactly.
And then when you have bilingual, where you might have a family that has an Asian speaker, Mandarin and Spanish, and so it's pretty fascinating to watch it. Everyone should be issued a child and watch them learn to speak.
Give them 6 months.
I have,
the
I have
first
to,
6 months.
I have to say, in my school, I have about 30% of our kids are at least bilingual, if not trilingual, Spanish, English, and Hebrew. And it's amazing to me when a 2-year-old comes up to me, and I already wouldn't have been able to understand them because they're a 2-year-old, but now they're a 2-year-old speaking to me in Spanish. So I'm lost on two fronts. It's amazing. It's an amazing experience. Lois, go ahead. Make sure you unmute, Lois.
We are having all this trouble with microphones. It's the words that are getting in the way.
It is the words, you're
of
right.
us
It's language.
communicating what we want to communicate. Or in our case, it's the technology that is stopping the words. All right, back to what I was going to say. If language is our operating system, when did you last upgrade? Are you using the same language that you used 10, 20 years ago? Oh, probably not. What do we, as a culture, as a society, as a group, what do we do with people who don't get the latest language? They're stuck. I used to have trouble with my mom. She would call things gay, and I'm going, Mom, that's not what you think it means, And it's like, yeah. But so how do we change our language, our operating system? Now, you've in your notes, you have talked about different kinds of technologies that have impacted us. And first we learned to speak, then we learned to write cuneiforms or whatever. Then we got an alphabet, then we got a printing press, telegraph, telephone, radio, all of these things that have assisted us in changing our communications. And some of them made it less, how should I say, more language and less communication. So if you are writing instead of talking face to face, you don't get the same emotional content. You can't see that person's face. You can't tell if they're mad or if they're happy. They could use the same words and mean totally different things, and you wouldn't know it. And that's one of the problems we have with emails, is that the person reading the email puts into those words the emotions that they have, rather than seeing, hearing, feeling the emotions of the person writing it. So I don't know if that does anything to anybody, but hey, communication's complex.
Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, I was kind of wrestling with this whole idea of the operating system being our words. And what came to mind to me first was that there is power in the naming of something. And from a religious point of view, we know that is significant. But one of the things that I recognize as an older person, when I think about an operating system, one of the things that happens is that when the operating system doesn't function in the way that it should function, one of the things that we do is we restart, we reboot. And I think that the way in which people, particularly of a certain age, like myself, who are continually trying to struggle with embracing new technologies, and some of it comes kind of easy and then some of it doesn't. And I think that the way in which we wrestle with that is that we continue to strive to connect with the new pieces of information or name or words that come forth. And in some sense, and I don't want to really seem kind of negative or but I think that in some instances, the struggle to continue to learn as you become older helps keep you alive. And I think that that's a way in which the operating system continues to have use and be of value. So I, I it's a little bit kind of, I'm not even sure that I'm conveying what I need to convey. So I'm just going to stop talking.
No, you're good. I appreciate that. Tamara, go ahead.
So many different things. um, I loved reading this document and kind of looking at how the history kind of unfolded. And one of the things that jumped out at me, not because I'm Lutheran, but was Martin Luther, because I had done a lot of research for a translation class that I did for children's literature. And one of the things that I looked at was Martin Luther as a translator. And what was interesting about Martin Luther is that the technology allowed to not only allow Bibles and other texts to be given to, not just average people, but be more mass produced. But he would go into the cities and listen to the German language. And so that Bible was actually a codification of the German language in print and how it was being used in person. And one of the things that made me think about this is that when a new technology happens, and we see it with every new technology, we're certainly in the thrust of it right now with AI, is that there's a period of time where people are excited about it, and then other people are completely resistant to it. They absolutely do not, they're not interested in it at all. And then there's either some kind of adoption or some kind of acceptance. And that is what is, and through that process is where that language develops. And then it becomes kind of part of the lexicon. I remember when I was teaching, I read an article, so this was a while back, where they said the lexicon is the American lexicon is most influenced by 8th grade girls. That 8th grade girls, their conversations are what is most impactful to the American lexicon. And I was like, that to me is so interesting.
Wow.
That, as technology is introduced, there's always a bit of resistance. And then at some point, there's an acceptance that becomes kind of part of our lexicon and part of our emotional drive as humans.
I love that. Sky, go ahead.
Well, I think the exciting thing is we keep trying to make everything exactly the same. The joy is actually in diversity. And the two challenges that I have is I even looked up the anecdote that I'd heard that the Inuit people of Alaska had over 400 words for the what we would call snow. But think about where they're located. The subtleties of all of the different shapes and forms and styles of wet oh, Dave's going to jump in. He's going to tell the facts, which is great, or at least the facts as he knows them. Because the other anecdote that came to mind was those people needing to communicate very specific details. So in that environment, they could use the different subtleties. The second anecdote might be true, might be not. We'll find out. We'll let perplexity, help me figure this out. Was after World War II, the British and the Americans got to figure out how to organize things. This is the anecdote that I've heard. David, you can probably, counsel me on this one too. But the way I heard it was the British would say, well, here's a topic. And the Americans said, okay, let's table it. And they put it off to the side. And the British went, no, let's table it. And they put it on the table between them. And the exact same phrase meant 180-degree opposite meaning because they hadn't connected with each other. So now those are my two anecdotes. Dave's going to fact check me. Go, Dave.
Well,
Well, there's
before
two fact checks here. I'll introduce a new one. There is
confuse the
no
audience.
word for fish in Japanese. They know all the fish, and they don't call it fish. So you can't really order fish. You have to order the fish you want. And as you know, there are a few thousand species. They're not all edible. In terms of the snow, unless you've been in snow like it is up there where it's like semi-permanent, there are only 36 kinds of snow. So 400, no, there aren't 400 words for snow. There's 36. So if you talk to an Inuit and you describe the snow correctly, you're an Inuit. You're all of a sudden you're a brother. If you know what is the difference between flaky snow, powdery snow, crystal snow, and which of the names makes a good igloo.
That isn't just about language though. That's about John. I'm
Culture
coming to you.
and
I
language,
promise. I'm
yeah.
coming right to you, John.
I want to table
I
that
just want to throw
conversation.
in. I just want to throw in though that's not just about language. That's Tlaloc in the chat said culture lives
There it
inside
is.
language, which is so
Yes.
beautiful. And that's what the fish and the snow. That isn't just language. That's culture. John, go ahead.
Their operating system has different
Right.
keywords. Yes.
Okay, I hate to burst bubbles, but
Uh-oh.
the idea that the Eskimo language had 100 to 100 words for snow is an urban legend. The original study was an anthropologist in 1911, and he did mention that they had distinct words for snow and words on the ground. So there were different things, but the total of them were not much more than us going, it's cold snow, it's wet snow. So as time went forward, it just got exaggerated. It's 100 words, there's 50 words, there's 200 words. So if you go back to the original source documents, that is an urban legend about the different
But
words.
people were up in that part of the world long before 1911. So just that because an anthropologist wanders in with his dog sled, doesn't mean he knows everything. I'm sorry.
I don't know. I'll give
He
you.
authored something. Congratulations.
We'll give him the hope that he learned his observation of what they were doing. Maybe it's a point in time as any observation is.
Speaking of Tamara's comment, Wycliffe Bible translators go into a part of the world that the government puts them into and says, we need to understand what these people are saying because they do not have a written language. And so they volunteer and they go in and they live in the environment for close to decades. Maybe now I'm hyperbolizing, but to be taught the nature of this, again, to Lalek's point, this social organization and try to translate something that had never been translated or put into cuneiform. So there's a mixture up into this conversation too. Sorry.
Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, I was kind of listening to everything that's being said, and I had a moment, and here goes a Star Trek reference. So first episode of season 4 of Strange New Worlds came out. Very interesting episode. I'm not going to do much of a spoilers, but I want to say that there was an interaction that had to do with the word alone, and that there was multiple ways of understanding the state of being alone. But as part of the conversation that was taking place on the show in that episode was that even the way you do inflections with a word that you use makes a difference in the understanding. And I think that that may be some relevance of our conversation today.
I'd like to ask Lois, can I jump in with a quick question?
Absolutely.
Because it's born out of some of what you were just saying, Tony. I'm wondering to what extent language creates reality. And I'm thinking about this because all of us and the whole office hours community, in one way or another, is in the business of, well, we've said before, we're in the business of attention, but we're in the business of helping people share ideas, make connections, using language.
Stories.
Telling stories, right? Using digital tools to spread that around the world. Do we understand the power that we hold in our mouths and in our hands? Here we go. I'm going to get biblical on you. I'm sorry. I'm going to get biblical on you. The very first verse of the Bible. How does God create the world? God speaks, and the world is created. That's religion, so forget that. But you get my point, right? If language it really does create reality, do we understand the power of that? Lois, I don't want to take away from what you want to say. I just need to get that out of my system. Go ahead, please.
I'll answer you. Yes.
There you go.
Okay. So what I was going to say, and I will say it anyway, even though I like your topic and I may come back to
No,
it.
please.
We have in our list of things, technologies that have changed our language and changed how we speak and how we communicate. I'm wondering what technologies were presented and rejected. What technologies failed to change our communication or our language or whatever? And I'm not sure, like Esperanto, that's not really a technology, but it's an idea, and it was very exciting, but then it was rejected. So I just thought I'd throw that in there, that not all technology changes us. Not all of it changes for the good or for the bad. Some of it just fades away.
Sky, go ahead.
So I did follow up, John, and I re-looked up the Boas Classic Arctic Fieldwork. And again, in the research that I've got, he was there for less than a year. I'm sorry, that's pretty thin data fact. So whether it's anecdotal
so
or
you're
not,
telling me he was on thin ice, but we can't know what word was describing.
look what you
That's
did
all I want to
there.
know.
Nice. So that nice save. But the other thought that I wanted to bring was, I just watched the Odyssey movie this week, and my brother-in-law, who is a doctor in psych, and he says, "So do you think the movie's going to be better than the book?" And I thought, the poem is what, 4,000 years old, and it wasn't brought into written form. It was verbally connected for how many thousands of years, and so I don't know if it's going to be better than the book, but I would recommend, if you're going to see it, go IMAX all the way.
It's funny. I heard different results. Different.
So, but Sky,
You will, from the different perspectives.
Yeah, Tamara, go
but
ahead.
Sky on that with that.
Hold on.
That wasn't the
Please.
only study. There are some Scandinavian countries that they have quite a few different words, and there's different words like David was saying with fish. If you know the name of all the fish, you don't have to have generic fish. So there were some discrete words and some primarily in the Scandinavia area where they had more than the words that one anthropologist picked. So
Tamara, go ahead.
And I think that's the living language that I'm very curious about, is that language is living, and it depends on how we connect with one another in relationship to its authority of this word means that. And that's why I brought up the British thing. And Dave Troutman, you didn't prove me wrong. So I'm 50-50 on my anecdotes tonight.
Yeah, you can still stick with that story. Yeah.
Tamara.
Okay, great.
I'll
I think
endorse that story.
I think one of the things that I'm really fascinated by with where technology is going really stems from being an ESOL, English for Speakers of Other Languages teacher. Students, when they come to America to learn, are often told to exchange. So particularly my students from China would come and they would, their parents would say, we don't want them doing any Chinese. And part of my job was to say, actually, you learn your second language with your mother tongue. And if you push that off to the side, you're actually going to slow down that process. One of the fascinating parts about technology that we're seeing in various ways is this ability to be sharing a conversation with people without an exchange of dropping your native language. And I think that's going to be, for me, really interesting to watch, because there's not, I always tell my students, like, English isn't better, it's just different, right? And I think that there's something really powerful and really interesting about, where does the future lie? Will these wearables that we have mean that I can talk to someone in real time in my language and they can talk back in their language? And what will that exchange look like? And how will that shape kind of a new conversations and communication going forward? And to me, that's really compelling, because it isn't an exchange of one language in order to be heard. It is a melding of, it's an acceptance that my language is important and that your language is important, and that we have things to give and take to each other. And so for me, the eternal optimist that it's going to, like, that the world is going to still maintain its humanity, to me, I feel like in a way that technology has a way of allowing us to have a humanity that we have not experienced before.
Dave, go ahead.
Well, I was going to respond to Lois's idea that there are some technologies that do not affect us. Unfortunately, I have to push back on that. Every technology we invent for ourselves becomes an environment we exist in. So you behave differently inside your car than you do on a bicycle. And you behave differently in this conversation than you would on the telephone. And you behave differently when you're writing by hand versus typewriter. And these are different environments. They're sort of mental environments that we put ourselves into in order to operate effectively or efficiently in them. So there are some technologies we have abandoned. Nobody knows Morse code anymore. Well, some people do, but not everybody. And we don't do semaphore anymore because we have the telegraph. But these things evolved over time because we needed to have something that would do things over longer distances. And then we invented it. And electricity actually changed almost everything humans came to understand about reality, because it's no longer dark when the sun goes down. You can do things now which you didn't do when there was no light. So this kind of thing, I think, is what we're talking about in terms of creating a reality outside ourselves. We are inventing the world every moment of our life. We are responding to it. And that's the world we end up carrying with us all the time. Those of us who are old, which is this group, sorry, Tamara, I'm putting you in that same group,
I feel in
have
that
a
group.
lot more of what they experience than someone who's 20. And someone who's 20 has less to remember, and they have more to learn and live. So I think in the sense that we're talking about the cultural aspect of it, we are dumped into a culture. We're born into that culture, and we learn its rules and its conventions and its myths. I often love to say that America operates on one big myth, the American dream. And it has formed a country that all that belief is in that same group of people. And when people come to America, they adopt it. They want to believe it, and that's what makes them an American. So in my sense, you have to talk about something like dreams to know what the world would be like without words, because those are simply, imaginary things. Even the words in a dream are imaginary. And then when you wake up and you get out of bed, well, there's this hardness that hits you, the real daylight and the real other people you live with, and now you've created another mode for yourself and immersed yourself in that environment. So I just wanted to expand the discussion a little bit that way. I also wanted to add, because I'm seeing a bit of it referenced in the chat and stuff. Art is a language all on its own, and filmmaking is a language all on its own. And a lot of nonverbal things have context, syntax, and conventions that we all expect. Sculptures, chalk diagram. I mean, chalk art is amazing. Three-dimensional art in the landscape is amazing. And we come across these things and they hit us and they tell us something. And they describe what humanity is going through at the time. And we look back at history and all the great art of history, and it helps us see what we have been as humans. So I think, I'm always on that media thing, but it's outside of media as well. The radio, some historians say the radio is how Hitler managed to gain power. And if the radio weren't around, no one would have heard of him. So we have these influences on what we're doing that come out of our new technologies. Will somebody take AI and conquer the world? We don't know yet. But if somebody does figure out a way to conquer the world using AI, we're all in big trouble.
Lois, go ahead.
So Dave Troutman just said that your technology changes you, and it changes your culture, your society, whatever. And I'm wondering how many different cultures and societies we have at the same time, all in the same country, because we're using different technologies. I'm not sure, but it seems
food culture has changed as a result of the microwave oven. So there's, that's the kind of thing I'm suggesting,
Yeah. And I'm thinking of people who are in intellectual pursuits and not doing physical manual labor. And then people who are doing something that is very valuable, but it's not brain oriented, it's hand oriented. A painter of walls versus a painter of canvases.
Right.
So I'm thinking that we again don't want to get too monolithic. We don't want to say that everybody is using a microwave. I think most people are, but not everybody.
Well, I
Anyway,
picked a popular thing, yeah.
So again, when did you last upgrade your technology, your language, your culture, your society? Are you the same as the people in the next town?
Well, I can say that I'm picking up Japanese because my son lives in Japan now, so that's a language I'm trying to pick up. I would say that plumbing has changed since the invention of the PVC pipe, and what we can do with plumbing has dramatically changed. So what we could not possibly have done with hard iron, we're now doing with PVC pipe, and plumbing as a profession. I call it a profession, not a trade, because it requires deep thinking sometimes.
Sky, go ahead.
Well, again, I love this conversation. And again, I credit, Tony for grabbing that word as a dialogue between humans to understand each other more better. And consequently, I just watched, Tamara's eye twitch when I started using bad grammar. So this is the different way we were raised, the different, concepts of words in certain order. And what I'm trying to find is that art, and more recently, I've been exploring the concept that art is a way of connecting and or making meaning, and the artist's responsibility is to help others see a thing in a way that they see it. Now, art, again, that's we could go 8 months on what is art. versus what is commerce versus what is, replication of a product. But I would hope that this could be the beginning of a much deeper dive of the humanity that I kind of reached out for earlier. Because yeah, the buttons will come, the buttons will go, we'll get excited about them, but this connections with other humans, I'd love this conversation. Thank you, David.
John, go ahead.
I was going to say with David, plumbing hasn't changed much, but it still tries to bring us good, clear drinking water. And then it also has to deal with a lot of other stuff that we want to get rid of. Just saying.
What, Sky, what do you make of, or anyone, what you've been talking about the power of language to connect. What do you make of the ways in which technological advances in language and how we speak have perhaps gotten in the way of those connections? And I'll give you one example. I'll never forget, I cannot remember where the idea came from, but many years ago, someone taught me that chat, we were kvetching about how when kids are typing in chat, they don't use punctuation and capitalization. I always do, which immediately everyone knows that I'm over 50, right? So, but what this person said, which I just thought was fascinating, is that chat is not written language. It's spoken language in written form. And when you speak, you don't use commas and periods. You don't have capitals. You just speak. And that's what chat is on your phone or what have you. A lot of folks, I've
recently recognized that an expletive of a profanity is my audible version of a punctuation, of an exclamation mark, because I did not connect with the grammar. I did not, as a human, understand that code, which is what it is in dots and dashes and in phrases. This is where, Tamara, please help me understand, because
Asking me.
What's that?
I said, you're asking me.
Well,
have you met me?
Oh, well, to Paskin's point is, when we stopped using punctuation, it freed me up from the guilt that I didn't know what I was doing, and let me make a more conscious effort on trying to connect in communication. And during COVID, I really came to understand that texting, if we're being biblical, is of the devil. It's just not communication. It's just thumbs,
See, I would disagree with that.
Yeah, see, that's
adamantly, I would
us
disagree
being
with
old,
that.
I think.
Yeah, I would disagree with that, because
me.
I think that language has changed when you're using a fully textual language, right? Because it is almost impossible to get the feeling that you are typing with furiously behind your keyboard may not be read at all without a lot of intervention, which is one of the reasons that we have emoticons, right? We have this is the intervention to not being able to read someone's intent in flat text, right? But I think that it's almost a different language, texting. And so that's why punctuation has gone away from it. But I don't think it's necessary. I disagree when we say things like it's of the devil. That's like saying another language.
For me.
Right. So qualify it that way, because I think that texting has allowed us a lot more communication. For example, my family, I have multiple texts with them. I'm in contact with them every single day. I also speak to them on the phone. I speak to them in person. I live with 2 of them, right? So I'm never out of contact. And I remember I was talking to someone I hadn't seen for a long time, and I was like, he's, telling me about his life, and he's like, oh yeah, my brother died, and I found out about it 4 or 5 months later. And I was like, that made me so sad, because that's an impossibility in my life. And one of the reasons that's an impossibility in my life is because of text, because we're not constantly talking to each other all the time. We're living in our own lives, often in different states. And we're able to kind of just continue on. So I think making blanket statements like this language is better than this language is the same as saying English is better than Chinese, which is not true.
Absolutely agree. Then the ethical question would be, did you return that knowledge with an emoji?
Right.
I
Because
often
there's
use emojis.
That's a whole
Well,
other, that's a whole other question, is the role of emojis. All right,
This
I
is
gotta get,
the social norms.
we're gonna do around the panel because everyone's got their hand up. So Dave, Tony, Lois, John, go. Dave.
If you've ever spent any time talking with a Caribbean, it's a different language, but they're speaking English. And in Caribbean movies, or at least movies shown in the Caribbean, they have English subtitles because you can't make out what they're saying. I've worked also with, and I've worked with Caribbeans, so this is why I know this. I've also worked with Lebanese who are every day in constant contact with family. This is just the way they are. And I can go months without talking to my sisters, sometimes a year, and they don't mind at all. They don't want to hear from me, and I don't want to hear from them usually. But the sense is that some cultures require more constant communication and some not. And this is just a cultural thing. Vic has been back at us with, I've made this longer than usual because usually I did not have the time to make it shorter. So I'll do the same. There is a Laws of Media book by Marshall McLuhan and his son Eric, in which it describes what happens with language and with media, mostly with the effect of the changes. So you bring in a new media like radio, and it enhances one thing, it obsolescence another, it retrieves from history or the past some other way of doing things, and then it does a reversal on something. When it accelerates, when radio accelerates to a certain level and becomes so as he called it, fast, it flips and becomes almost the opposite. So we go from radio as a nice, comfortable musical center and a little bit of speech and solemn talk about things that are important to, shout radio. So I wanted to bring that into play because this goes to the idea that our world is constantly changing and every new technology has an impact. And these guys studied it for a long time, wrote a very long book about it. In which you can actually describe, if you came across a new technology, which is what's happening right now, then we can put it through that meat grinder and see what kind of effect it's going to have, or at least anticipate it.
Tony.
Yeah, first I want to blame office hours because I did not do a lot of texting until I became a part of the office hours community. I kind of had that mindset that Sky had in terms of the whole thing of texting. I really didn't like it. And now I've evolved to almost 80% of my texting now is voice to text. So I'm really made the shift. I'm all the way over now on the other side. And so I just think that it is all a part of continuing to grow and to evolve. And the language that we speak is just going to continue to evolve. That way, what someone spoke, the way someone spoke 20 years ago is going to be different than the way people are going to speak 20 years from now.
Lois, go ahead.
I say thank you. And you say you're welcome. At least that's what I was taught, but that isn't what they do now. It's no problem, or something that implies that my saying thank you put an obligation on someone that they're rejecting. It's very confusing. But my real thought here is that David said texting is a different language, that because there's no punctuation.
No, not a different language, that it's spoken language rather than written language. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a different
So
mode.
I don't agree with that. So if I text someone, I don't do this. I do this, and I turn it on and I talk to them and I say da 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 comma da 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 period da 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 new line. I am speaking,
hence spoken language. Yes.
And so I am using text. It is text, but it is written language, not spoken language. I think what I would like to say is that most of the, when text first came out, it was neither written language nor spoken language. It was summation language. It was outlines of things. It was so short that you had to compress your thought into one or two words. And so people had to become mind readers, basically, to know what the heck did she mean. Now, with the dictation capabilities, I can go back to actually writing text.
John, giving you the last word.
Well, I'm not sure it'd be the last word. A couple of things we talked about punctuation. If you haven't heard the Victor Borga, it's on YouTube
Oh my
where he
gosh, I
talks
love
about
him
it.
so much.
Punctuation
I love
was
him
spoken.
so much.
And some of us here on this panel may know there was a time when you had to pay for your texting and your minutes. And I was teaching a class and we had a whole discussion of, is something worth texting before 5 p.m. when it becomes free? So it's this whole discussion of the value of text. I just want to thank you, Dave. I thought this was a fun topic. It reminded me of one of my favorite kid stories. I took my children down to San Francisco. They went to my friend's house that lived in a 4-flight walk up, had 4 floors. Kids were there visiting. We came back. We were in Chico, and my daughter kept on saying, "I want to go to the 4-chapter house." I couldn't figure, what's the 4-chapter house? And she was in kindergarten, and they had chapter books, and each chapter of a chapter book was a story.
Mm,
So it became the 4-chapter house.
I love
So
that.
on that note, that made me laugh, and I pulled this out just in case we needed
You're
it.
on mute. Sky, bring us home.
I am so grateful to be connected with you, whether it's in a chat or a text or a verbal audible or a long email. That's the best Victor Borg I can do.
That was pretty good. Lois, I got a wrap. You got 10 seconds.
I hope that we find a good title for your program.
I've got one.
What?
Run my show. Run my
Yes,
dot show.
perfect.
That's good.
Run
I
my
like it.
show.
Run my dot
I like
show.
show.
Showboard
Gotcha.
Live too, though.
Yeah.
I like run my show.
I think it's unanimous. Run my show. Yes.
Hold on.
Yes.
I'm checking out. Hold on.
But remember what the problem you had with you when the rundown dot show and people had trouble with that? Maybe you want runmyshow.net.
Well, too late. I just
You already bought it.
Just press
yes.
go.
I just press place order. All
It's
right.
quick.
I'll
I
see
own
you
it.
next Thursday.
I own it. Hey,
So much
everyone,
gets
thank
done
you
in
so
this
much
show.
for being here. I appreciate all of you and this conversation. Tomorrow morning, the conversations continue. We'll be on office hours with your questions and your answers as always. Tomorrow afternoon, we'll be in the Zoom test kitchen. And the next week, we'll be right back here with tremendous gratitude to the office hours community, to Zoom for powering all this magic, and to every one of you for watching. Really, genuinely, your comments, the chat, it's so important for our conversation. So until next week, bye, everyone.